Hi everyone, so I thought because I literally just filmed my Ever After film review, I would finally try and make a discussion video about the TV series Once Upon a Time, because as you know I like my fairy tales and my fairy tale retellings, and I studied it at uni because I'm that much of a nerd, and it excites and interests me. I can't explain why. So of course I certainly was interested in watching Once Upon a Time, but I was very dubious about how it would be. I began watching it after maybe 4 or 5 episodes would have aired in the US by the time I started getting it online, because of course it's only just airing over in Australia because we're nice and on the uptake like that. And I was hearing a lot of stuff from my dear friend Fran, who was giving me reports on how the show was going thus far. And she had kind of mixed feelings, and I thought, okay, well I'll try and keep an open mind and I'll watch it and I'll just see how it goes. I knew that it was sort of, because it's on ABC Family I believe is the station it's on over there, I figured it would probably not be able to go too dark into anything, given the demographic I suppose they were aiming for. So, yeah, I mean, I've excuse me, I did enjoy the first season. There were certainly episodes I preferred vastly over others, and some kind of felt like filler at times, as though they realised that, oh, we better kind of pick a different fairy tale to do this week, because maybe people are getting bored with always having Snow White, and yes, I was, but more on that later. So certainly some episodes were stronger than others, and there were episodes that did take a slightly darker route around things, and those were definitely my favourites. And the performances, for the most part, I'm pretty impressed by. The only I'm going to sound so heartless, and you know, everyone think me evil if you want. I know my friend Fran agrees with me on this though. Henry shits me to tears. I don't know whether or not it's necessarily the performance by the young actor, or if it's the way he's written, or if it's just his role in everything is essentially just one note throughout. And I mean, it's purposeful, and he is driving the plot forward by being so bloody insistent on Emma remembering everything. But he just shits me. He really does. And maybe it is the performance. I don't want to be too harsh because, you know, it's a child actor. But I mean, they deserve their criticism too, and they'll learn from it, and he won't care what I'm saying. But yeah, and anytime Henry's on screen, I just feel like strangling his little neck. And I think that makes it difficult because so much of Emma's battle with, what's her name? Regina, is often based around, you know, like wanting ownership of Henry and wanting to spend time with him, and their different varying ways of showing their love for Henry, and more on that later too. And it's just really difficult for me as a viewer to empathise or understand or even care about it all, because I just like Henry so much. So it's like they're pouring this love onto this little person that I don't like. So yeah, I'm very disconnected from any time it's like a Henry and Regina and Emma like triangle thing going on, and just like, Henry's annoying. So yeah, Henry shits me off. For the most part though, everyone else, I enjoy the performances. Jennifer, is it Jennifer? No, Jennifer, I get them confused. What I do like, and this was the thing that excited me the most when I first heard about this show, I've always thought that Jennifer and Jennifer have very similar faces, and I would often get them confused in other films where their hair colour was more similar and stuff. So I think it's really cool that they're actually kind of playing mother and daughter in this. I thought, good work, casting director people. That was clever, I was happy with that. At times, Jennifer, who plays Emma, the protagonist, can grate on my nerves a little bit simply because of her facial expressions, but I guess sometimes she doesn't have all that much to work with, because Emma, for the most part, is either confused or angry, really, so that's essentially what she gets to do. On the rare occasion that she's happy, though, you get to see a bit more dynamic, so that's nice. In terms of how they handle the fairy tales, I do think that some of the fairy tales, even though they weren't given nearly as much screen time as others, had more weight to them in the delivery. There's a Disney-fied, Disney-ish slant to how the fairy tales are presented, because it's ABC, and that's owned by Disney, I believe, so they've been able to have the liberty of taking the like nods and allusions to the Disney versions of these fairy tales and put them into their story, so that ultimately changes how it's going to be presented anyway, because that, you know, makes it more family friendly and all that kind of thing. Now, I don't necessarily dislike that. It was fun to spot all the Disney allusions and stuff, especially in the Beauty and the Beast episode, which I know is a favourite of a lot of people. You know, to see Cogsworth and Mrs. Potts and stuff like in the background and little names and things. Also, is it Game of Thorns? was Belle's dad's flower company. That was cool. So yeah, the Disney element doesn't bother me too much, but it does take away the grittier feel whenever we go into fairy tale land that I would have appreciated it at times. It kind of dumbed down moments that could have been a little more serious, I suppose, because you have, you know, Jiminy Cricket directly there, and, you know, that's a Disney allusion. The Blue Fairy is a Disney allusion. So, yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about the Disney side of it, because I'm a huge Disney fan, but ultimately when it's live action and fairy tale, and for the most part the events going on in the real world in Storybrooke are more serious and more true to life, so I guess it makes a bigger dissonance and clash between the two when you've got the Disney stuff amped up over here, and then it's more, slightly more credible and real over here. So yeah, often the clash wouldn't help too much, I think. I'm going all over the shop with this review, so I apologise. Favourite performance by far for me is certainly, now I've gone and forgotten his name. I'm going to just say Mr. Gold and Rumpelstiltskin, but I know who the actor is, so this really shitting me. Anyway, it'll come to me later. Scottish man, Full Monty dude. I know who it is. This is really annoying. And anyway, his performance is by far my favourite, and his characters are certainly my favourite as well. I really like Mr. Gold. I think that he's threatening in his own way and incredibly manipulative in things, but you still, for whatever reason, you just find him more. I find him more interesting than anyone else in Storybrooke, because there's just more of a personality going on there, and so there's more light and shade and stuff. I think it would be easily the most fun role to play if I could be in that cast. And of course Rumpelstiltskin is interesting because they've gone and changed an awful lot of his storyline and made it more, expanded upon it and given it a lot more depth and different reasons for his behaviour and things, and his role in other fairy tales was expanded. Like, he's been inserted into other fairy tales to be the role of, like, the villain in other fairy tales that he wouldn't ordinarily be in. Like, he's the Beast in the Beauty and the Beast storyline, so I thought that was interesting, and certainly that was another reason that I came to care for him a lot more. The Beauty and the Beast storyline, I wish that had been developed over at least 2 episodes, because it's one of my favourite fairy tales. I just was really keen to see how they were going to handle it, and I liked it for the most part, but it felt like the skeleton of what could have been, and I wish they could have done more and spent more time on it. And any time in that episode that they went back to Storybrooke time, I was like, oh, go away, I don't want to hear about freaking David and bloody Mary Margaret. I want to go back to Beauty and the Beast, see what was doing there. So that was shitting me, and I do wish that had been given more time to expand. I do like that the Stockholm Syndrome side of things, while it was like still presented as being a romantic ideal in that, which was bothersome, there was just one line that I know Regina, the Evil Queen, had, and she said, oh, I would never encourage a girl to go and to fall in love with someone who held her captive, or something. There was some line like that, and I was like, good nod to Stockholm Syndrome criticism, that was good. Unfortunately, they didn't really expand upon that, but at least it got a mention. That was pretty good. Another storyline I was really looking forward to was, right from the outset, I wanted to see Red Riding Hood's story, because Ruby, who is the Storybrooke version of Red Riding Hood, was kind of portrayed as being, you know, maybe, like, I don't want to use the word, like, she kind of looked tardy in a way, and like this, you know, vibrant young woman who would like to be out in the town and stuff, and her grandmother said, you know, stop sleeping up your way up and down the eastern seaboard and stuff. And I was really excited by that, because I thought, are they actually going to address the slut-shaming aspect of Red Riding Hood that was in the original tales? Are they actually going to do that? That's amazing. So I was so keen, waiting and waiting and waiting for the Red Riding Hood episode so we could see the backstory there. And I was just eager as hell and really curious, and anytime Ruby was on screen, I'm like, oh, there's Ruby, what's going to happen? Then nothing happened. So I waited like it was 13 or 15 episodes before the Red Riding Hood episode came up, and because I'd built up so much anticipation, of course it let me down. And they didn't do the slut-shaming side of it, which was really upsetting, and doesn't make that much sense now, given how Ruby is in Storybrooke. There's not that much of a parallel between her fairy tale self and her Storybrooke self. And so I don't know why they've tardified her, if not to have given her that, you know, that backstory in fairy tale world. So I don't understand that, and I felt really let down. That episode wasn't bad, it was still interesting in its own way, and Granny is such a badass, I bloody love Granny. But, yeah, that was one I really built up and was disappointed by. One of my favourite episodes, I have to say, is The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, which is the Huntsman episode, and by far a more interesting Huntsman episode than the entirety of the Huntsman story in Snow White and the Huntsman. That was I really liked that one, and I cried at the end of it, and I thought that was really beautifully handled, and it was much darker. It was probably one of the first ones, aside from the Rumpelstiltskin episodes, that went a little bit darker and a little bit more adult, so I was really impressed by that. Just in terms of the villains, I don't have a problem with the performance by, I've forgotten her name, but the lady who plays Regina / the Evil Queen. I find her interesting for the most part. The only thing, they do overdo her crying to show that she has a human side and vulnerability and things, and they overdo the crying aspect, I think. Sometimes it's like watching Brooke on Bold and the Beautiful, where she just can't stop crying, has overactive tear ducts or something. That can get a bit grating and a little bit overdone and heavy-handed, but for the most part she still has moments where I actually really quite care about her, and I'm, you know, if you watch the show you can tell me what your opinion is, but I genuinely believe she does really care and love Henry, but, you know, her behaviour certainly doesn't justify, rather that doesn't justify her behaviour by any means, but I do think there is genuine feeling there. However badly she's gone about showing it and, you know, controlling his life and things, I do think it's genuine, and I think in a way I always felt really bad for her because he treated her quite poorly. He's a little shit to her, which is understandable. He thinks she's the evil queen, well she is, and he's cast her as a villain in his head, but I do think he was a bit harsh to her sometimes. That could be just because I don't like Henry. I'm definitely keen to see what they're going to do in the second season. I don't know where else they can go really and what they're going to be able to expand upon. I'd like to see if they're going to address more fairy tales and how they'll do it. Maybe it'll get darker, but I doubt it. I'm certainly keen to see what Rumpelstiltskin / Mr. Gold's getting up to, because his story in particular I find interesting, because I do think his relationship with Belle is potentially quite doomed, just because he is so power hungry, and that makes a really interesting struggle and interesting, potentially very interesting path for him to go down, and, you know, challenges for him to face. So I'm just curious to see what they're going to do there, because I think they've foreshadowed the fact that that's probably not going to end well. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm sick to death of David and Mary Margaret. They took up so much storyline that could have been given over to other stuff and more time in Fairy Tale Land. I didn't dislike them too much as Prince Charming and Snow White, but even then they were the fairy tale that got the most attention, because they were the fairy tale couple that kind of were the centre of the events that occurred. So yeah, it was mainly just that they took up a lot of time, and David and Mary Margaret were just an adultering pair of idiots, so I didn't care about them at all, and I just wanted them gone. So I really hope they shift the focus off them a little bit in season 2. But I'm still curious. I'll definitely watch it. And yeah, if you've watched the show, just let me know what your thoughts are. I think for the most part it was pretty damn decent, really, and it was enjoyable. I don't know if it would make anybody become a fairy tale fan if they weren't already, but I do think for those of us who have an interest in that area of literature and folklore and stuff, then it was probably quite fun to watch. So just let me know what your thoughts are, and that was my just overall review on season 1 of Once Upon a Time.